Why did the system stay silent? 17 seconds. That was all it took for the impossible to happen inside America's most secure intelligence facility. No alarms, no alerts, no trace of intrusion, just 17 seconds in which the names of 37 covert operatives flickered on a screen they were never meant to reach. 17 seconds that could have condemned them to death. No one noticed, no one except her. Morgan sat at her terminal, posture flawless, eyes calm. To anyone passing by, she was a secretary, the kind of quiet, unremarkable woman who blended into the background of military bureaucracy. Neat hair pulled back, emerald eyes that hinted at intelligence but gave nothing away. At 5'7", she carried herself with efficiency, not presence. She was invisible. That was the point. For 19 months, she had cultivated invisibility at Fort Lawrence. A civilian contractor, an administrative specialist, a woman who processed classified files with machine-like efficiency. She smiled at the right moments, spoke in measured tones, and made herself forgettable in every room she entered. But forgettable did not mean blind. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, steady as stone, while her eyes tracked the anomaly through the system logs. The fingerprints were faint, subtle, intentional, but unmistakable to someone who had been trained to see them. She should not have been watching those logs. She was not supposed to have access at all. But Morgan lived her days in two skins, the unremarkable secretary and the soldier who never stopped observing. A voice broke her focus. "Morgan, can you process these Panama briefings for the morning meeting?" Senior intelligence specialist. 60 years old, hair steel gray, reputation carved from 4 decades of guarding America's secrets. His presence could unsettle even colonels, but turned smoothly, switching screens with a practiced flick. "Yes, ma'am, priority protocol." "Standard is fine." Sharp eyes lingered on her monitor for a second too long, kept her expression neutral, just another worker caught in the churn of classified paperwork. "Everything all right with the network this morning?" asked, casual but probing. "Yes, ma'am, just clearing cache files." The lie came effortlessly, a reflex from months of rehearsed cover. Accepted it with a nod and moved on, already occupied with other matters. Let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The cavernous processing center buzzed with routine. Concrete walls sealed the room like a bunker. Electromagnetic shielding barred outside interference. Biometric locks guarded every door. Screens glowed with maps, intelligence reports, and secure transmissions. To outsiders, Fort Lawrence was impenetrable, a citadel of secrets. But knew better, because she had been placed here to know better. She sat at her workstation, playing the role of obedient clerk while her mind worked at a different level. The system had been breached. 17 seconds. No alarms. No trace. Only the faint residue of a digital ghost. And it was a ghost she recognized. The memory came back sharp and bitter like shrapnel under the skin. Iraq, 1991. Desert Storm. She had been a junior intelligence specialist, eager, green, believing the war could be survived with discipline and luck. Then came the compromise. Their encryption broken. Their location exposed. Gunfire and explosions tearing through a safe house that was anything but safe. 4 of her team had died that night. Only she and 1 other survived, scattered into the desert, hunted. The culprit had never been officially confirmed, but she had seen the signature even then. Prime number access windows, surgical data theft, perfect silence in the system. The work of a Russian phantom known only as Ghost. And now his shadow moved across her screen again. Her pulse quickened, though her hands never faltered on the keyboard. Colonel James Westbrook's voice carried across the floor. At 58, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, he was the kind of man who carried authority like armor. He strode between workstations, asking after reports, nodding at updates. To the room, he was the watchman at the gate. 2, he was another piece on the board. Westbrook oversaw everything. Yet he, too, had not noticed the breach. She had. When the facility settled into its brief afternoon lull, excused herself. The women's restroom, the one blind spot without surveillance. She locked herself in the furthest stall, reached into her purse, and retrieved what no secretary should ever carry, a modified smartphone, compartmentalized and encrypted beyond recognition. Her fingers typed swiftly. Watchman access breach confirmed. Pattern matches ghost. Require guidance. The reply came in 90 seconds. Sentinel confirm and monitor only. Do not engage. Redwood arriving 700. She deleted the message, replaced the device, and returned to her desk before the clock could accuse her of lingering. Her face calm, her demeanor unremarkable. Inside, her heartbeat drummed with the echo of 1991. Ghost was alive, and he was inside Fort Lawrence. That night in her unremarkable apartment 23 minutes from the base, cooked a bland dinner, the kind expected of a quiet civilian. The television muttered local news. Her mind replayed the breach. Who inside the facility had helped Ghost? Who had the access, the skill, the motive? She listed names in her mind, Torres, Wilson, all possible, none proven. Later, beneath blackout curtains and white noise, she became herself again. The secretary dissolved. The soldier emerged. From under a floorboard, she retrieved a secure satellite phone. Watchman secure, she said softly. Sentinel receiving. The voice of Master Sergeant William Harrison, gruff calm, her handler, her only anchor to the world she truly belonged to. She told him what she had found, the breach, the prime number signature, the unmistakable mark. Ghost doesn't leave witnesses, Harrison warned, not twice. The words cut deeper than he knew, because she remembered the witnesses who hadn't been spared. Their faces still haunted her. When she finally lay in bed, weapon under the pillow, back to the wall, eyes fixed on the door, she knew sleep would not come easily. The ghost of Baghdad had returned. And this time, she wasn't the green soldier caught off guard. This time, she was the hunter. But hunters bled too. Why was she still pretending? The question pressed on Morgan's mind as the morning sun cast pale light across Fort Lawrence's outer walls. To the world, she was arriving as she always did, at precisely 7:42. The same parking spot, the same navy pantsuit, the same polite greeting to the checkpoint guards, every motion rehearsed, every detail consistent. "Morning, Morgan," Sergeant called from the gate. "Good morning, Sergeant," she replied with a faint smile, presenting her ID. The biometric scanner hummed, green light confirming her clearance. To them, she was just another civilian worker, a woman whose name rarely made it past the personnel roster, but beneath her steady pace and composed face, his mind was burning. The ghost was here. She had seen his signature, and he wasn't a shadow from the past anymore. He was walking the same halls she did. Inside the processing center, the day began with the same cadence as every other. His voice set the rhythm, distributing assignments with sharp precision. "Eastern Europe packages finalized by end of day," she ordered. "Pentagon inspection team tomorrow. No delays." Pentagon inspection, his attention sharpened. Coincidence? No, nothing about this timing was coincidence. She accepted her assignment, nodded at and settled at her terminal. Fingers typing, eyes reading, posture correct. The model secretary, the ghost of her cover, yet her thoughts danced elsewhere, weaving connections, searching for the breach. It didn't take long to notice him. Technical Sergeant Brandon Wilson, the youngest senior tech in the facility, late as usual, hair slightly unkempt. Brilliant, rebellious, dangerous in more ways than one. He sat a few rows away, tablet in hand, scanning logs with the intensity of a man who distrusted the world. At first thought nothing of it. Then she caught him watching her, not casual glances, not curiosity. His gaze was analytical, like a man running calculations in his head. Had he noticed? She shifted her focus, kept typing. Invisible, forgettable, but her pulse betrayed her. If Wilson had caught her scanning unauthorized logs yesterday, the careful balance of her mission could collapse. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Torres approached her desk, carrying files. "Morning, I'll need the Belarus assessment within the hour." His tone was smooth, professional, almost kind, but he lingered longer than necessary. "You've been with us almost 2 years now, right?" 19 months, sir." "You do good work. Says you're one of the most reliable in this place." It was nothing, a passing compliment, yet the timing was wrong. For 19 months, Torres had never bothered to comment on her performance. Why now? Suspicion tangled in her chest. Was he fishing, testing, or simply being polite? She kept her smile measured. "Thank you, sir, just doing my job." He nodded and left. But her instincts did not relax. The morning stretched on, sifted through NATO files, eyes fixed on text, mind alert for anomalies. She noted 3 vulnerabilities: a maintenance window extended without explanation, a privileged account with too much access, and a server query pattern that made no sense for routine work. Ghost was probing, slipping in and out like smoke. Lunch arrived, and with it another chance to observe. The cafeteria was a theater of body language. Sat with Westbrook and tense, shoulders tight. Wilson sat alone, eyes glued to his tablet. Torres was absent. Ate mechanically, every bite another covered detail, while her eyes cataloged posture, silence, subtle glances exchanged across the room. Something was shifting in Fort Lawrence. Security personnel moved with sharper purpose. Communications specialists checked equipment with unnecessary frequency. Whispers carried without words. The air smelled of suspicion. When she returned to her desk, she set her trap. A canary document, a file dressed like routine intel but laced with invisible markers. If someone touched it without authorization, she would know. Hours later, Wilson appeared beside her workstation. His voice was low, casual, but the weight beneath it was not casual at all. "Interesting system queries you were running this morning." Froze inside. Outside, she tilted her head in confusion. "Excuse me." "The cache clearing you told about, that's not what you were doing." His eyes pinned her, sharp, probing. "You were inside the security logs. Alpha 7 clearance required. How does a secretary get into Alpha 7? The world around her seemed to hush. She kept her expression soft, almost embarrassed. "I was following instructions, verifying document access histories for the NATO package. If I clicked somewhere beyond my clearance, it must have been linked." Wilson studied her, face unreadable. "Interesting. Doesn't usually delegate security verification." "Perhaps you should ask her," offered, tone mild but edged with dismissal. For a moment, silence hung between them. Then he leaned closer. "Or perhaps we should discuss why you're really monitoring those systems, Morgan." Her pulse thundered. He knew, or at least he thought he knew. Before she could respond, the PA system cut across the room. "Attention all personnel. Security briefing in conference room Alpha, 15 minutes. Attendance mandatory." Wilson straightened, eyes still on her. "We'll continue this later." He walked away, forced her face into calm neutrality, but inside her cover was trembling. In conference room Alpha, the entire facility gathered. Colonel Westbrook's face was stone. "We have reason to believe Fort Lawrence's networks may have been compromised." A murmur swept the room. Did not murmur, she watched, every glance, every twitch, who looked surprised, who did, who kept their eyes too still. "Effective immediately," Major added. "All personnel will undergo enhanced background checks. Dual authentication required for access. Physical documents restricted to essential staff only." Nodded firmly. Torres stayed impassive. Wilson's gaze roamed the room with the same analytical sharpness as hers. His heart tightened. During the briefing, her canary file had been accessed. 13 seconds, a prime number, a signature. Ghost was in the system even as the room gathered to discuss him. And he was laughing. When the meeting ended, Wilson ran scans across multiple terminals. He came to hers, posture professional, tone clipped. Security sweep. She stepped aside, outwardly unbothered, inwardly tense. He was thorough, too thorough. Custom tools, not regulation. When he finished, he looked up. Systems clean. Then, almost casually, interesting though you're the only admin with access to the Eastern Europe package. Expanded clearance, huh? Requested it 2 months ago. Extra workload, said evenly. Lucky timing. His eyes lingered, not hostile but not fooled either. The day ended with heightened protocols, checks, heavier glances. As left the building, intercepted her. Pentagon teams arriving early tomorrow, 600. You'll assist with their demonstration. Yes, ma'am, said her voice calm, but her mind raced. Outside, as she walked to her car, she noticed the sedan 2 cars behind. Government plates, perfect distance, a tail. She drove with the same consistency she had lived for 19 months, but her routes curved unexpectedly, groceries, wrong turns, speed variations. Natural but deliberate. Eventually, the sedan was gone. Only then did she detour to a quiet park, sat on a bench, set her phone beneath it. The dead drop engaged, transmitting her encrypted message in 90 seconds. Watchman Ghost confirmed active. Pentagon team tomorrow. Wilson monitoring unusual activity. Facility compromised. 7 minutes later, she retrieved the sanitized device and walked back to her car. Her face was calm, her pace steady, but inside she was already shifting. Tomorrow would test every piece of her cover. Tomorrow she would no longer be invisible. Because the ghost wasn't just hunting files, he was hunting her. Why had the Pentagon chosen today? The question pulsed in his mind as she slipped through Fort Lawrence's biometric scanners at 5:50. The air outside was still dark, cold, restless. Inside, the facility hummed with the kind of anticipation that meant everyone knew something was wrong, though no one said it aloud. Was already waiting in the processing center, papers stacked in precise order. Her gray eyes softened only slightly when she saw. Morning, Morgan. The demonstration materials are at your station. Review them carefully. We can't afford mistakes. Yes, ma'am. His voice carried the same mild deference she'd worn for 19 months, but her thoughts were elsewhere. Westbrook had requested her personnel file. Wilson had been circling her like a wolf. And Ghost, he was already inside the system, fingers moving unseen. As she began preparing the documents, she wove something else into the process. A set of digital tripwires, invisible threads embedded deep within the files. If anyone tried to access them, she would know. They weren't alarms, they were whispers, silent signals only she would hear. By 7:00, the inspection team arrived. The sound of boots on tile, clipped voices, the sharp scent of authority entering the room. Colonel Westbrook greeted them stiffly but barely heard his words. Her eyes locked on one face in the group, an older man, weathered, deliberate, with calculating eyes that missed nothing. To most, he was just another inspector. To her, he was Master Sergeant William Harrison, her handler. He did not look at her, not directly. Instead, he stepped to her station with the cold detachment of an auditor. Walk me through your processing protocols. Yes, sir. Her voice carried the tone of a dutiful civilian, but when he leaned over the files, his words dropped so low no one else could hear. Ghost is targeting operation. High-value extraction in Minsk. Find the leak. She didn't flinch. She simply nodded as if answering a mundane question, but inside her blood chilled. Operation. The kind of mission where one wrong detail meant American operatives walked into a trap. As Harrison moved on, thoughts raced. Ghost wasn't stealing for sport. He was after and couldn't fail. By mid-morning, the inspection felt like theater, generals and analysts scrutinizing procedures, nodding at protocols, asking questions that sounded official but missed the point. All the while waited, watched, listened. Then her console flickered. One of her tripwires had snapped. Unauthorized access, files, duration 13 seconds, prime number. Her pulse pounded. Someone was in the system now, using credentials, but was across the room briefing Hayes in person, which meant Ghost was masking himself with legitimate profiles. He was inside right here, right now. She launched a passive trace, subtle enough not to trigger attention. The signal pointed to the secure communications room, the workstation assigned to Lieutenant Colonel Torres. Her throat tightened. Torres had been professional, personable, maybe even kind. Was he a traitor or a pawn? Either way, Ghost was using his seat. Before she could move, alarms erupted across the facility. Red lights strobed. Sirens wailed. The calm hum of Fort Lawrence shattered into chaos. Security breach in progress, the automated voice announced. Colonel Westbrook's voice cut through the noise. This is not a drill. Lock down all systems. Containment Protocol Alpha, now. Kept her face composed the way a civilian should, but inside her mind sharpened. Ghost had forced their hand. He wanted the chaos. He thrived in it. Wilson sprinted to the main security terminal, fingers flying. Breach is from the comms room. Credentials in use. Data being Eastern Europe Ops package. Personnel surged. Orders shouted. Hayes stepped forward, taking command with quiet authority. This facility is under Pentagon authority now. No one enters or leaves until we isolate the breach. Scan the room, faces pale, eyes darting. Looked stricken, her name now tied to a breach she hadn't committed. Barked instructions dispatching teams. And then Westbrook's words cut like a blade. We need someone with special operations documentation experience to implement containment protocols. Silence, no one moved, because no one here had that expertise, no one except her. Felt the weight of the moment pressing on her chest. Her mission was deep cover, 19 months of invisibility, but if she stayed invisible now, operatives would die. Turn desperation in her voice. Morgan, you've worked with classified ops files. Do you know the protocols? Her heart clenched, eyes turned toward her, Wilson's gaze suspicious, hopeful, demanding, Harrison's silent, steady. She reached for her badge, and the choice was made for her. A small metallic tab slipped from its hidden compartment, landing on the polished floor with a sharp clink. The green and black insignia of Delta Force. The room froze. Westbrook stooped, picked it up, his eyes narrowing as recognition struck. This is authentic, he said quietly, not something you acquire by accident. Straightened, 19 months of subdued posture shedding like a skin. Her voice, calm but commanding, filled the silence. I am Staff Sergeant Morgan, United States Army, Delta Force, assigned under Joint Special Operations Command to assess security vulnerabilities here at Fort Lawrence, and I can help contain the breach. The air shifted, whispers, stares, disbelief. Wilson didn't look surprised. His suspicion had just found its answer. Looked betrayed, though part of her expression held a flicker of pride. Looked furious. Westbrook, his face was stone. Conference room Delta. Now, Westbrook ordered, voice like steel. She followed, Harrison at her side, Hayes closed behind. The weight of every eye followed her until the door shut behind them. Inside, the storm broke. 19 months, Westbrook demanded, voice tight. 19 months undercover in my facility without my knowledge. Not without authorization, Hayes cut in. Her placement came from JSOC with approval at the highest level. She was here to find vulnerabilities you couldn't see from the command chair. Westbrook's glare softened, though only slightly. So I was being tested. Not you, answered, her tone measured. The system, the procedures, all of it. After multiple breaches elsewhere, they needed eyes inside, invisible eyes. Harrison added, and now her cover is broken because the situation leaves no choice. Ghost has compromised operation. The name hit the room like thunder. Westbrook paled, Hayes grim, explained. If Ghost got the extraction details, our operatives in Minsk will walk straight into an ambush. We have less than 18 hours. Are you certain it's him? Westbrook asked, voice gravel. Yes, sir, said. Her voice carried the weight of Iraq 1991. Same signature, same precision, same ghost. The room was silent for a beat. Then Westbrook exhaled slowly. All right, then we fight him here. Harrison leaned closer too. His whisper was for her alone. Careful, he doesn't leave witnesses. Her eyes hardened. Not this time. Why did silence feel heavier than shouting? Morgan sat at the long oak table of Conference Room Delta, the storm of her revelation still hanging in the air. Delta Force insignia on the table, Pentagon brass starring, Westbrook packing, Harrison silent as stone, Wilson leaning back, arms crossed, eyes fixed on her as if she were a puzzle missing one crucial piece. The weight pressed on her chest. For 19 months, silence had been her armor. Now it was her enemy. Finally, Westbrook broke it. All right, you claim you can stop this breach. Prove it. Met his eyes, calm, unyielding. I don't claim I will, but I'll need access, real access. No shadows, no locked doors. If I'm going to stop Ghost, I have to work in the open. Wilson gave a sharp laugh, though his eyes didn't soften. Convenient. You've been spying on this place for over a year, and now you want us to hand you the keys. I wasn't spying, she countered, her voice steady but edged. I was protecting. Everything I did was sanctioned by JSOC. If I'd wanted to burn you, Tors, any of you, I had 19 months to do it. You're still standing. That should tell you where my loyalties are. The silence stretched. Hayes leaned forward, his Pentagon badge catching the light. We don't have the luxury of time. Is in play and Ghost won't stop. Either she leads this, or those operatives are dead before dawn. Who had said nothing until now finally spoke. If she's Delta, she knows what's at stake. Let her work. The room shifted. Westbrook exhaled hard, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Fine, you've got provisional authority. Wilson, you're her shadow. If she breathes, you know about it. Wilson smirked, gladly. Didn't flinch, she only nodded. The briefing dissolved into orders, dispatched additional guards. Hayes arranged secure comms to JSOC. Harrison watched her with that same unreadable calm, the look of a man who had placed his faith in her, but knew faith alone could not stop ghosts. Within the hour and Wilson were side by side at the main operations console. The room was a hive of tension. Screens flickered with code and comms. Operators whispered into headsets. Guards lined the walls. Wilson tapped rapidly, pulling live access logs. Tor's credentials were used again 15 minutes ago. Same pattern. Ghost is piggybacking through him. Leaned closer, eyes narrowing. Show me the raw data. He hesitated, then pulled it up. Numbers scrolled, clean and clinical. To most eyes, meaningless. To hers, it was a signature she knew too well. Prime number intervals. Bursts of 13, 17, 19 seconds. Her chest tightened. It's him. Wilson looked at her, suspicion tempered with curiosity. How do you know? Because I've seen it before. For a moment their eyes held. She wanted to tell him about Iraq, about the safe house that wasn't safe, about blood in the sand, but she didn't. Not yet. Instead, she traced the signal deeper. He's not just stealing files. He's mapping access points, testing where the system bends before it breaks. Which means he's inside right now, Wilson muttered. Yes, and he's watching us. As if to confirm her words, the monitors flickered. A single phrase appeared across all screens. You don't belong here. The room froze, operators gasped. Hand flew to her mouth, swore under his breath. Wilson's voice was tight. That's not possible. This network is air-gapped. Ghost doesn't care about possible, said. Her voice was calm, but inside her heart hammered. The words weren't for the facility. They were for her. She turned back to her console, fingers flying. Ghost wanted her rattled, wanted her exposed. She wouldn't give him that. Instead, she dug deeper, laying silent snares. One wrong move from him and she'd catch a thread to pull. Beside her, Wilson was watching, not just the screen but her. "You don't flinch easy." "Flinching doesn't stop bullets," she replied. His lips curved, not into a smile, but something closer to respect. Hours bled by intense silence. They found fragments, Tor's account used again, credentials shadowed, ID pinged in Moscow of all places. Every sign pointed inward. Ghost wasn't alone. Someone inside Fort Lawrence was his doorway. By evening, suspicion was a living thing in the room. Barked at Tor's everything, his voice sharp with indignation. Defended him, but her tone wavered. Westbrook demanded answers no one could give. And she watched, observed, waited. At 1932, her console pinged softly. Her canary file triggered again. 13 seconds, not Tor's this time, not. Wilson leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "Who is it?" His chest went cold. The credentials used belonged to Sargent, the same man who had smiled at her every morning at the gate, the one who waved her through with casual warmth. Her mind spun, didn't have the technical skills to be Ghost's equal, which meant he was a pawn, a human, his access stolen or coerced. She said quietly. Wilson's jaw clenched. "He's on shift right now." Before she could respond, the alarm screamed again. Not digital this time, physical. The facility doors locked down, security lights strobed, automated barriers dropped across hallways. "Perimeter breach," shouted, "South Sector." Chaos exploded, guards sprinted, shouted orders. Westbrook barked into a comm unit. And Wilson exchanged a glance. Ghost was inside their walls, not just digitally. She reached for her sidearm that she wasn't supposed to have. Wilson noticed, eyebrows lifting. "Secretary, huh?" Her answer was a quiet steel. "Not anymore." They moved through the corridors, shadows cutting across flashing red lights. Every corner carried weight. Every echo made the skin tighten at the back of her neck. Near the south sector they found. His eyes wide, his hands trembling. Not a soldier anymore, but a man caught in something too big. "They said my family," he stammered. "If I didn't give them access, they said they'd kill my family." His throat tightened. She knew the tactic. Ghost didn't just hack systems, he hacked people, broke them from the inside out. "Where?" she asked, calm but urgent. "Safe house, Arlington. They're holding them there." Wilson cursed under his breath. "It's a trap." "Of course it's a trap," replied. "But if we don't move's family dies, and Ghost wins twice." For the first time, Wilson saw it. Not just the soldier in her, but the weight she carried. The choice between mission and humanity. "Then what do we do?" he asked quietly. Her eyes hardened. "We go, but on our terms." Why did traps always look ordinary from the outside? The Arlington safe house was just another two-story brick home on a quiet suburban street. Children's bicycles leaned against a fence. A porch light flickered weakly in the dusk. To a passerby, it was forgettable, invisible, the perfect disguise for something meant to hold hostages and bait hunters. Morgan studied it from across the street, crouched low behind the black SUV. Beside her, Wilson adjusted his comm earpiece, scanning infrared readouts on his tablet. Harrison sat in the driver's seat, silent, his jaw set in grim understanding. 3 heat signatures inside, Wilson whispered. 2 in the back room, 1 near the kitchen. No sign of family, could be a bluff. Kept her eyes on the house. She knew better. Ghost didn't bluff, he manipulated. He used real pain to force real obedience. "They're in there," she said quietly. "Alive for now." Wilson shot her a look. "And you know this how?" "Because I've seen his work before. He keeps leverage breathing until he doesn't need it." The silence after her words was heavy. Harrison finally broke it. "We go in, clear fast, extract the family. Morgan leads. Wilson, you cover." Wilson bristled. "With respect, Sergeant, she's not my co." No, Harrison replied evenly. She's mine. That ended it. They moved, black fatigues blending with shadows, footsteps soft, weapons ready. At point, breath slow, body controlled. But inside, her pulse hammered. She had lived this before: desert raids, hostage rescues, moments where one wrong step collapsed everything. At the porch, she raised her fist, signaling halt. The door was ajar, too easy. A faint hum whispered from inside, equipment, not household. Booby-trapped, she murmured. Wilson frowned, studying the frame. Pressure sensor, military grade. Whoever set this up wasn't improvising. Ghost again, always precise, always surgical. Motioned left, circling to the side window. Glass thin, curtains drawn. She eased it up slowly, slid inside like a shadow. Wilson followed, Harrison last. The house smelled wrong, not lived in, too clean, too empty. Every sound, the creak of a floorboard, the drip of a faucet, felt. They moved toward the back room, weapon steady, her breath shallow. She reached the door, counted down silently with her fingers. 3, 2, 1. She kicked it open. The family was there: his wife, his daughter, his son, bound but alive, eyes wide with terror. Relief flickered across their faces at the sight of uniforms. Then the beeping started. His blood went cold. Not bombs, sensors, transmission signals. The family wasn't just bait, they were broadcast. Ghost had known she would come. Move, she barked. Wilson cut the restraints. Harrison hustled the family toward the window, swept the corners. Nothing. No enemy. Just cameras hidden in vents, lenses gleaming faintly. Her stomach tightened. Ghost wasn't here, he was watching, testing. As Harrison pulled the family out, stayed behind, scanning the feed. She spotted the uplink, an encrypted transmitter wired into the fuse box. Without hesitation, she ripped it out, smashed it, silenced the stream. But not before one final message, scrawled across the kitchen screen. You should have stayed invisible. Her throat tightened. He wasn't just taunting her. He was reminding her of Iraq, of the night her cover had slipped, the night 4 friends had died because she believed invisibility could last forever. She turned, her voice sharp. Go get them out. Outside, the family sobbed into his arms as soldiers secured the perimeter. Harrison gave the all-clear, but's eyes stayed fixed on the empty windows of the house. Ghost wasn't inside. He had never needed to be. He had reached into her life from a distance and forced her hand. Back in the SUV, Wilson couldn't hold back. So that's it. We pulled the family out, shut down a feed, and what? Ghost just gets to laugh at us. Didn't answer immediately. She stared out the window as the SUV rolled through dark streets, porch lights, empty sidewalks, the kind of normalcy she could never touch again. He's probing, she said finally. Every move we make he studies, every choice he tests. He wants to know how far I'll go. Wilson's voice hardened. This isn't just about you, is hours away from collapse if he hands those details to the Russians. I know, cut in, sharper than she intended. The silence afterward was raw. She softened her tone. I know, but Ghost doesn't think in files or codes, he thinks in people. That's why he's dangerous, that's why he wins. Wilson leaned back, studying her. For the first time, his suspicion wavered. Not gone, but tempered by something closer to respect. When they returned to Fort Lawrence, chaos awaited. Had spread maps across the table, barking updates into 2 phones, Westbrook demanding progress from exhausted analysts. The moment walked in, Westbrook turned. Report. His family is safe, she said evenly. House was wired with transmitters. Ghost has live access to our responses. He's using real people as pawns to map our moves. Shoulders sagged, swore again. Westbrook slammed his fist onto the table. And he demanded. Glanced at Harrison. He gave the slightest nod, permission, trust. She drew in a breath. If Ghost has full intel, our operatives are dead before they land. We need to cut the feed before he transmits out. That means isolating his local relay node. He's not working from Russia. He's here. Close. Wilson frowned. How close? Close enough to reach family. Close enough to be inside our supply chain. Maybe even this facility. The words sank in like lead. His voice was a whisper. You're saying Ghost isn't just a phantom on a screen. He could be in this building. Didn't answer, she didn't have to. Because deep down she already knew. Ghost had always been a shadow that followed too close, always one step ahead, always where she least expected him. And now the battlefield was Iraq or Minsk or some digital server in Moscow. It was Fort Lawrence. It was her. Why did walls feel like cages when you couldn't trust the people inside them? Fort Lawrence no longer breathed like a secure facility. It pulsed like a trap. Redundancies doubled. Guards tripled. Doors clamped shut with steel locks that echoed through the halls. But none of it mattered, not when the enemy wasn't forcing his way in but already living in the wires. Morgan sat at her station, monitors bathing her in pale light. Code scrolled past. Every keystroke was a heartbeat. Every flicker could mean the difference between life and death in Minsk. Across the room, Wilson leaned against a console, arms crossed, eyes fixed on her. His posture was relaxed, but his gaze never softened. He still didn't trust her. Not fully. Not yet. Finally he spoke. You know you're not supposed to exist. Didn't look up. Neither is Ghost. That's different. She turned then, her emerald eyes steady. Is it? Silence stretched, taut as wire. Wilson pushed off the console, stepped closer. I've read your file, what little of it wasn't blacked out. Desert Storm, Baghdad. You were there the night the safe house fell, and somehow you walked away when no one else did. Her throat tightened. The memory slammed back uninvited. Gunfire shredding walls, the heat of flames, screams cut short, sand sticky with blood. I didn't walk away, she said softly. I crawled. For once, Wilson didn't respond with suspicion. He only nodded, as if something in her words had landed. Before either could say more, the alarm blared again. Unauthorized data spike, system breach in progress. Spun back to her console, fingers flying. Numbers surged across the screen, cascading like floodwaters. Ghost was pushing harder now, probing not just files but live communications, leeching from every channel at once. He's accelerating, she muttered. He's after full extraction if he cracks it. Wilson cut in grim. Our people are dead. Operators scrambled, barked orders countered with technical fixes. But the breach was a storm, and they were patching holes with tape. His eyes caught something, a pattern buried inside the surge. Not random, not brute force. Coordinated, localized. Her pulse spiked. This isn't coming from outside, it's originating here, inside the facility. Gasps rippled through the room, face darkened, someone's feeding him. Not someone, corrected, her voice was steel. Multiple terminals, multiple credentials, he's puppeteering half this room. Accusations exploded. Voice rose, shouted back. Wilson's jaw clenched, his hand drifting toward his sidearm as though expecting betrayal to come with bullets. Enough, Westbrook thundered. His voice silenced the room, his eyes fixed on, if you know how to stop this, do it. She inhaled, steadying herself. This was it. No more shadows, no more invisibility. I need full command line access, route clearance. Scoffed, that would give her control of the entire system. She already has control, Wilson countered, surprising everyone. She's the only one Ghost hasn't outplayed yet. If you don't let her try, we're done. Met his eyes. For the first time there was no suspicion in them, only trust, raw and reluctant. Westbrook gave a sharp nod. Do it. The room shifted, credentials unlocked, barriers lifted. His console bloomed with unrestricted access. For the first time she saw the network naked, every port, every protocol, every anomaly glowing like veins under X-ray. And there he was, Ghost, a flicker in the code, sliding between nodes, writing stolen credentials like a parasite. She could almost feel him watching her, mocking her, daring her. She whispered under her breath, "I see you." Her fingers danced, weaving digital traps, rerouting false signals, setting snares where he thought the walls were weak. Wilson hovered beside her, watching, not interfering. The room held its breath. Then contact. The system jolted as her trap snapped shut around a fragment of his code. Not the whole Ghost, but a thread of him. A traceable echo. Coordinates flared onto her screen. Not Moscow, not Beijing, Arlington, again, but deeper this time, not the safe house. A relay hub buried under an abandoned government warehouse. "He's local," she said, her voice sharp. "Not across the world, he's here. Arlington Relay Hub, that's where he's running this from." Westbrook leaned forward. "Then we take it down." Harrison's voice was calm but firm. "Not we, her. She started this. She finishes it." Stiffened, she knew what that meant. Ghost didn't make mistakes. If he'd left a thread, it was because he wanted her to find it. The warehouse wasn't just a hub. It was an invitation. Wilson caught her look. "It's a trap." Her lips tightened. "Of course it's a trap." For a moment the room was silent, all eyes on her. Then spoke softly, almost like a prayer. "Be careful, Morgan. Ghost doesn't leave survivors." Stood, her chair scraping back. Her voice carried across the room, calm and resolute. "Then it's time someone proved him wrong." The SUV roared down the highway, night pressing heavy against the windows. Harrison drove, silent and focused. Wilson rode shotgun, his rifle across his lap. Sat in back, checking her gear with deliberate care. Her extra magazines, comms unit, knife. Everything felt both too heavy and too light. She had been here before, on the edge of an op where one mistake meant not coming back. But this wasn't just another mission. This was her past clawing back from the sand, daring her to stand or break. Wilson glanced at her in the mirror. "You sure about this?" "No," her voice was steady. "But I don't get to be sure, I just get to go." For the first time, Wilson gave a short laugh. Not mocking, not cold, almost human. "You're insane." "Probably." Harrison spoke then, his voice gravel. "You're not insane, you're Delta, and Delta doesn't quit." Felt a flicker in her chest, pride buried deep but alive. Not arrogance, not bravado, just the quiet fire of belonging. The SUV slowed, pulling up half a block from the warehouse. The building loomed against the skyline, dark, derelict, windows shattered, walls with graffiti. But faint lights pulsed inside. A heartbeat that didn't belong. They moved out, silent shadows against darker streets. At point, Wilson closed, Harrison covering rear. The warehouse door creaked as she pushed it open, the sound too loud in the stillness. Inside, the air was damp, metallic. Dust swirled in the beams of their flashlights. But beneath the dust, the hum of servers. Racks lined the far wall, cables snaking like veins, lights blinking with malicious life. Ghost's nest. Wilson raised his rifle, clear left. Harrison swept right. Moved forward, heart pounding, every step a defiance of fear. Then the screens lit up, all of them, dozens at once. Lines of code flashing, rearranging, twisting into words. "Welcome back, Katherine." Her breath caught, not Morgan, not Sentinel. He knew her name. And with it, the weight of her past came crashing back. Why did his voice sound like memory? The warehouse hummed with servers, a chorus of blinking lights painting the shadows. Morgan stood at the center, weapon raised, every nerve burning with tension. Wilson flanked left, rifle tight to his shoulder. Harrison swept the rear, calm, deliberate. But the words on the screens cut deeper than any weapon. "Welcome back, Katherine." She hadn't heard her name like that in decades. Drawn out, familiar, weighted with history she'd buried under years of missions and silence. Her throat tightened. "Show yourself." A distorted laugh filtered through hidden speakers, low and deliberate. Always straight to the point. That's what I admired about you. Baghdad proved it. Her chest constricted. Baghdad, 1991, the safe house, the ambush, 4 dead because the system had been compromised, 4 she hadn't been able to save. Wilson glanced at her, confusion etched across his face. What the hell is he talking about? Didn't answer. Her weapon swept the shadows, every sense tuned for movement. The voice deepened, intimate. You've been chasing me for years, but the truth is, you never escaped me. You survived that night because I let you. Her heart hammered. The words dug under her skin, but she forced her tone to remain cold. You're lying. Am I? Or is it easier to believe you earned survival than admit you were spared? The shadows shifted at the far end of the warehouse. A figure stepped into the pale glow of a server stack. Tall, broad-shouldered, civilian clothes but the stance of a soldier. His face was lined, hard, weathered by time, but his eyes sharp, calculating, and familiar. His breath caught. Michael. Wilson's rifle twitched. Wait, you know him. Her voice was a whisper. He was on my team, Desert Storm, intelligence specialist. We thought he died that night. Michael, once a brother in arms, once someone she trusted with her life, and now ghost. He smiled faintly, a scar twisting his lips. Not dead, just reborn. The room tilted in her vision. Memories clashed with the present. His laugh in the desert, his steady hands over a radio, his blood on the sand. She had mourned him, carried his name like a wound. And here he stood, the architect of her nightmares. Why, her voice cracked raw, why betray everything? His eyes glittered. Betray? No, I adapted. I watched good men die for corrupt leaders and hollow missions. I gave my loyalty to a system that fed us into fire and called it patriotism. Baghdad opened my eyes. The Russians opened the rest. You sold them names, she said, fury trembling under her calm. You sold your brothers. I sold illusions, and I bought survival. Wilson's voice cut sharp. So this is what you are, some washed-out soldier hiding behind code. Michael's gaze shifted, dismissive. You wouldn't understand. You've never had to choose between blind obedience and seeing the truth. His eyes returned to, but you understand, don't pretend you don't. You've lived in their shadows, used, hidden, discarded when convenient. You and I were the same. Her weapon trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of memory. She had felt invisible her whole life, buried beneath cover stories, erased from recognition. There was a dangerous flicker of truth in his words. But then she saw his family in her mind, terrified, trembling, held hostage for leverage. She saw steady loyalty, Harrison's unwavering faith, Wilson's reluctant trust. She shook her head. No, we're not the same. You broke, I bent. There's a difference. His smile faded, replaced by something colder. Then you'll break tonight. The lights surged. The servers roared. Automated turrets unfolded from hidden mounts in the ceiling, barrels swiveling toward them. Down shouted. Wilson dove behind a support beam as bullets ripped the air. Harrison fired controlled bursts, knocking out one turret, then another. Sparks rained, the warehouse alive with chaos. Rolled across the floor, barking, shredding the nearest mount. Her heart thundered, every move drilled from years of training. But these weren't just bullets, they were Michael's words made flesh, his betrayal echoing with every shot. Run, he called over the chaos. Like Baghdad, like always. Her rage steadied her aim. She fired again, dropping the last turret in a shower of sparks. Silence slammed back into the room, broken only by the hum of servers. She rose slowly, eyes locked on him. I didn't run then, I won't run now. Michael tilted his head, studying her. Then prove it. He turned and slipped deeper into the shadows of the warehouse. Surged forward, but Wilson's hand caught her arm. It's a trap, he's pulling you in. I know, her voice was steel, but if I don't go, dies. Wilson's eyes searched hers. He saw the fire there, the determination, the pain, the refusal to yield. Finally, he released her arm. "Then I'm with you." Harrison gave a single nod, steady as stone. Delta doesn't walk alone. They moved deeper, weaving through aisles of servers, shadows stretching long. Every corner threatened an ambush. Every hum of machinery felt like a whisper from the past. At the heart of the warehouse they found it, a central console glowing with encrypted feeds. Maps of Minsk sprawled across screens, troop movements flashing in real time. Ghost wasn't bluffing, was seconds from collapse. And standing before it was Michael. He raised no weapon, only looked at her, eyes burning with conviction. "You can't stop it, the system is rotten. Let it burn. Let them learn what you and I already know, that survival isn't about loyalty, it's about clarity." Her voice shook, but her aim didn't. Clarity doesn't hold families hostage. Clarity doesn't bury its own men for a payout. His lips curved. "Then maybe you're still blind." He tapped a key on the console. The feed surged. Coordinates transmitted, time collapsing. Fired not at him but at the console. Sparks erupted, screens dying in a cascade of darkness. The feed cut mid-transmission. Silence roared. Michael's face twisted, rage, sorrow, something unnameable. "You chose them, again." Her voice was quiet, heavy with both pain and pride. "I chose not to become you." The room trembled, not metaphor but real. A low rumble echoed from the floor. Charges. Ghost had wired the warehouse. Michael's voice came like a curse. "Then we all burned together." The first explosion ripped the far wall, fire spewing like a beast. Alarms wailed, dust choking the air. "Move," Harrison bellowed. They sprinted, heat searing their backs, metal screaming as supports collapsed. Lungs burned, her heart thundered. Wilson hauled her through falling debris, Harrison covering their rear with bursts of fire to hold shadows that weren't even there. They burst through a side door as the warehouse convulsed behind them. The night split open with fire, the building collapsing into itself. They stumbled into the street, coughing, battered, alive. But Michael was gone. Not dead, not caught, a ghost again. Stared at the burning ruin, her chest tight with rage and grief. He had been within reach, her past, her nightmare, her mirror, and he had slipped away once more. Wilson staggered beside her, panting. "So what now?" Her voice was hoarse but resolute. "Now we finish what we started, still stands, and so do we." The flames reflected in her eyes, a fire that wouldn't go out. Why did survival always feel heavier than death? The flames of the warehouse still burned in Morgan's mind as the convoy sped back toward Fort Lawrence. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. The night sky glowed faintly orange in the mirror. Michael was gone again, a ghost slipping back into the shadows, but was not yet. Inside the SUV, silence pressed heavy. Wilson sat in the passenger seat, his face pale, bruised, eyes shadowed with exhaustion but unbroken. Harrison drove, hands steady on the wheel, jaw clenched. Sat in the back, her weapon across her lap, her thoughts heavier than steel. The weight of what she'd seen, the man Michael had become, gnawed at her. Betrayal still tasted like blood, but there wasn't time for grief, not yet. At Fort Lawrence the air was electric, rushed forward, her face pale. "We lost signal on 7 minutes ago. We thought—" She stopped, her eyes catching the soot on his uniform, the ash in her hair. "What happened?" His voice was flat. "He's alive, he knows us, and he's still coming." Westbrook stepped closer, his tone sharp. "What about, did he get the coordinates?" Shook her head. "Not all of them. I cut the feed before it finished." Wilson added, grimly, "But even a partial leak is enough to compromise the mission." The room tensed, cursed under his breath, covered her face. Haze from the Pentagon leaned forward. "Then we need if's compromised, we can't let the team walk into a death trap." His eyes locked on the maps sprawling across the screens. The extraction zone outside Minsk glowed like a wound. Every second ticked louder in her chest. "We don't have to abort," she said quietly. "We have to outmaneuver him." Wilson shot her a look. "You're suggesting we feed him?" "Yes," she answered. "Give him what he thinks he wants. False coordinates, a shadow op. Let him chase ghosts while the real team moves unseen." The silence stretched. Then Harrison nodded slowly. "She's right. Ghost expects us to retreat. He expects fear. The only way to beat him is to use his own game." Westbrook's jaw tightened. "You're gambling with lives." Met his eyes. "Every mission is a gamble, but this one we can stack the odds." After a long pause, he exhaled. "Do it." The next hours bled into each other in a blur of motion. Worked beside Wilson, weaving digital shadows into the system, planting false trails, masking real signals with phantom echoes. Monitored comms, steady despite the strain. Coordinated security sweeps, barking at anyone who slowed. For the first time wasn't invisible, she was central. The woman they all watched, the one they leaned on. At 2:17 the first ping came. Unauthorized access. Ghost was biting. Pulse surged. He's taking the bait. On the screen, code shimmered. Michael's signature threading through false coordinates, swallowing them whole. His arrogance was his weakness. He thought he had outplayed them again. Wilson whispered, almost to himself, "He doesn't know." His eyes stayed locked on the screen. Not yet. The minutes stretched like hours. His real extraction moved silently, shadows in the dark. The false trail glowed bright on Michael's systems, a lure designed to drown him in false certainty. And then it worked. Confirmation signals lit up, was safe, extracted, alive. A collective exhale swept the room, sagged against the table, swore in relief. Westbrook closed his eyes for a single beat. But didn't exhale. She watched the code still pulsing on her screen. Michael hadn't stopped. He hadn't slowed. And then her comm pinged. An encrypted message, routed through channels she shouldn't have been able to read. But she knew his hand in the code. "You can save them today, but tomorrow I'll still be here. Because you belong to me, just like Baghdad, just like always." Her chest tightened. She deleted it without hesitation, but the words lingered, not a threat, a promise. When dawn broke over Fort Lawrence, the facility breathed easier for the first time in days. The operatives were safe, the system secure, for now. But knew better. Ghost wasn't gone. He was never gone. He was a shadow that slipped between cracks, a wound that never healed. In the debrief, Hayes pressed for answers. Westbrook demanded accountability, wanted blood. But Harrison's eyes found hers, steady and grounding. "You did it," he said simply. She shook her head. "Not yet." Later, in the quiet of the women's locker room, she sat alone on the bench, her badge in her hand. Not the secretary's ID, not the Delta insignia, just a piece of metal that reminded her of who she was and who she was. Her reflection in the mirror looked tired, bruised, older than she remembered. But there was something else, too. A fire in her eyes that hadn't died, no matter how much Michael tried to smother it. Wilson entered quietly, his tone softer than she'd ever heard. "They're alive because of you." She didn't look at him. "They're alive because of all of us." "Maybe, but he wanted you rattled, and you stood." Finally, she met his eyes. For once, there was no suspicion there, only respect, and maybe something like understanding. He gave a faint smile. "You don't belong here, Secretary." The words, once meant to wound, now carried weight of recognition. She smiled back, tired but steady. "No, I never did." That night sat alone in her apartment, the blackout curtains drawn, the on the table, the Delta badge beside it. Outside, the city moved on. Lights blinked. Cars passed. Life continued, oblivious to the shadows that brushed against it. She knew Michael was out there, watching, waiting, a ghost she could never quite catch. But she also knew something else. She wasn't the same woman who had crawled out of Baghdad broken. She was standing now, bruised but standing. And as the silence settled around her, she understood the truth. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand recognition. It simply acts.